3D printing your own feedback muffler or hole cover. This is something I made many years ago for my older guitar, which is the darker one here. So I thought I'd make one now for this Glarry. And as I've been doing videos on improving the Glarry, I didn't want the hole cover to suddenly appear and I'd be getting loads of messages, what is it and what does it do and where did it come from. So a very quick video on how I made it and why I made it. I'll put a link to a zip file containing the models in the description above if I can, and if I can't I'll put the link on the eBooks for Guitar website. And then the only thing you'd need to do is possibly adjust the size of the hole and you're good to go. The first thing you'll be asking is what do you need a hole cover for? And really you don't need one. However, firstly I think it looks cool. Secondly, it seems to stop the guitar from bellowing. If you strum the guitar hard you get a lot of mid-tones and you lose the definition. However, if you put a sound hole cover on, this particular guitar anyway, it seems to hold back the mid-tones and allow the sort of higher frequencies to come through, and therefore you get more definition when you're strumming. I'll try a test at the end to see if this actually comes through on the microphone. Another thing you can do with it is, I've left this particular one with the pattern open so that air can come in and out of the guitar. If you put a disc on the back of this hole cover with something like hardboard or plywood, or even butyl, a kind of pond liner rubber, it will stop the sound virtually altogether. And this will prevent feedback if you're trying to play on stage beside very loud speakers and you're having a pretty feedback problem. Another thing you can use a hole cover for is to keep our hairy friends out when you're trying to change your strings. Right, I'll start the 3D print and then I'll explain what I'm doing whilst it's printing. I'm printing this hole cover in two parts, and the reason I did this is because when I printed my first hole cover I did the whole thing in PLA, which is quite brittle and hard plastic, and I was finding if you push it into the hole on your guitar, really you have to leave it there, or you have to be very careful as you're putting it in and removing it, because the PLA can quite easily scratch the wood or the varnish. So with this hole cover, the part that goes into the hole I'm printing using TPU, which is a flexible type of filament which shouldn't scratch the guitar. And then the front I will be printing with the PLA, but with a wood infused one, so it looks more natural. Once the print's ready, you want to clean it up and then look for the flat edge. Then where the flat edge is, you want to cut that part of the skirt off. It doesn't have to be tidy, just get a straight edge. And this is so you can test it on the guitar and make sure you've measured it correctly. Once you know your part is correct and it fits properly, you can cut the rest of the skirt off. The reason I try the part before I cut the whole skirt off is because the skirt prevents it falling into the guitar. However, I'll put it in the hole again and just double check it fits properly. Now if you've never 3D printed before, the skirt is just a part that is printed extra to make sure it stays stuck to the plate whilst it's being printed. And with the more commonly used plastics like PLA, this skirt will just break off very easily. However, with this rubber stuff, it just doesn't break off, so you have to cut it off. Right, I'll start the second part printing. This part I'm printing with PLA, however it's infused with 25% wood, and I find it's really good for printing parts you want to make look wooden. You'll notice this part doesn't have to have a thick skirt either. It sticks quite well to the plate by itself, so it doesn't need much of a skirt at all. Right, let's time lapse the print. see here just how well it's stuck to the base plate, and it needs some persuasion to get it off. You'll also notice the 3D print is pretty messy, and that's partially because it's so complicated, partially because the wood infusion does create problems, and partially because I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to 3D printing. This is where the fun begins, because cleaning up the print takes ages, but it does have one real benefit, in that when you're finished it really does look like a hand-carved piece of wood. I do this cleanup in 3 stages. Firstly, I use a scalpel knife to remove all the plastic threads. Then I use a diamond file to get the surface as smooth as I possibly can. And finally, I use a piece of sandpaper or wet and dry to finish it off completely. However, I do return to either the scalpel knife or the file whenever I see it necessary. I printed this part with no hollows so that it doesn't matter if I cut a bit too deep. For the next step, I stick the first part we printed to this second part, and you just have to make sure the flat edge is lined up and that it's as close to the middle as possible, and you've got an even edge right round the side. Once you've done this, you can see it's starting to look quite like the finished piece. It just needs a little more cleaning up. However, you'll notice some strange patch of colour on the back, and that's because I thought about staining it, but I changed my mind after doing these tests. Once you're sure the glue's thoroughly dried right the way through, you can try it again on the guitar to see how it's going to look. Hopefully you agree with me that with a little bit of finishing off, it's going to look quite cool. Once you've cleaned it up, you can give it a quick coat of lacquer, and I'll be using cellulose lacquer, which is the same stuff you use on a car. And this really just hides the fact that it's a 3D print and makes it look a little bit more like wood. I'm not going to put multiple coats on or anything like that, it's just enough to hide the fact that it's a 3D print. Though you're probably better not spraying it outside where bits of tree fall on it, like I did here. And once it's done, here's the finished product, and it just clips back into place, and I think it looks really good. Now for the final sound tests. I'll just strum a single open chord and then rake the strings across, with the cover on and the cover off, using an external microphone, the internal microphone and the piezo, and then I'll go between the 3 sounds using the video editing so you can hear if there's any difference. Piezo pickup, first with the whole cover and then without. Internal microphone, first with cover and then without. External microphone, first with cover and then without. To be perfectly honest, it's too close to call. Even here, where I'm hearing it live and I can hear the uncompressed recordings, there is really very, very little difference. Remember though, different designs will have different effects on the sound. It depends how much air you're allowing to escape through the sound hole. So, make of these tests what you will, but I really like this sound hole embellishment and I'm going to leave it on anyway. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more guitar related videos, please like and subscribe, and then you'll be notified when I publish new ones.